Hello and welcome to another light and diagram lesson. My name is Trenton Hoshiko, and today we're talking about Mere Pichaud by Guy Rose. This is a really beautiful portrait of an older woman sitting at her kitchen table, and we have a light source coming in from the window, and just the absolute darkness surrounding her is really what stood out to me. We have lots of lovely contrast. It's almost like a chiaroscuro level of blackness and contrast around her. And I just thought that would be a good thing to talk about today. Before we get started, if you want to get my free lighting tools template for Draw.io, that includes all of the tools that you do see up here, so that you can just get started diagramming right away with Draw.io, which is a free and open source diagramming software. I have a direct link to the page in the video description, and you can get this file for Draw.io absolutely for free. I just put it out there to help people out with learning how to diagram lighting, learning how to use reference images, and then obviously communicating those lighting setups to their team. I just want to help people grow as filmmakers in that way through the process of pre-production and planning. Like I said, it is a free template. You don't even have to have an account for Patreon to download it. So there's no barriers. But if you do want to join Patreon, I'd love to have you as a free member or a paid member. Paid members help support me in making these lighting diagrams, my other cinematography videos, as well as other projects that I'm working on in both filmmaking and photography. Paid tiers start at just $2 a month, and they really do make a difference. Thank you to everybody who's gone over there and joined already. I really appreciate every single one of you. Thank you for your support. If you go pick up the template and you want to learn how to use it, I do have a couple tutorial videos that I'll also link down in the video's description. Before we start talking about lighting setups, let's talk about the painting itself. So we have our source, which is the window right here, and it is coming right to left in terms of our frame. This is a, I think, pretty hard light because we do get some distinct shadows around her, but we do have some light that's bouncing off of things like the white wall here, and there are some sort of curtain. They look pretty sheer, but they're not covering the window. So that sunlight is coming, as far as we can tell, quite directly through the window to light her. The other ways that you can kind of tell how the lighting is working are the side of her face closest to the window is pretty bright, while the side on the other side is pretty dark. But I think there's some artist manipulation here in terms of how dark her shoulder is versus how dark her face is. Both of these are getting a similar kind of light onto them. The direct light from the window, direct light from the window right here, but the face is still a little brighter than the shirt, which is pretty blacked out. Like I said, I think this is some artist manipulation here so that we can still see her full face. As filmmakers, we're going to do some trickery ourselves to make sure that we can still see into the shadow side of her face while still retaining a lot of these dark tones. The other shadow that I want to look at is down here, which is the shadow from the leg of the chair that she's looking at. That helps us once again know that this is a pretty hard light. We can look at that shadow as not being, diffused at all. It is having pretty sharp edges. Now, the actual brushwork of this painting is relatively loose, and there is kind of a fuzzy edge and a strong stroke. So all of this stuff is going to be interpreted to our lighting style, even though it's a little bit more abstracted in the painting itself. And that's one of those things that separates painting from, photographic mediums, in that you can manipulate how the picture actually feels by changing things like brushstrokes for painting. And, for us, it's more of like, how do we use the lighting? And then we can use things like filtering to change some of those feelings in a similar way, but distinct. I always love to think about how some of those small changes like that really do make a difference between the mediums. Now, if we look at the back of the chair here, we want to make sure that we are both simultaneously getting the bright light of the sun onto the edge that is closest to us as the viewer, but the back right here is almost completely blacked out. I do think that the light is slightly angled towards the back wall, not an incredibly harsh angle. It's not like 45 degrees to her, but it might be 15, 20 degrees towards that back wall, which helps create that this angle right here, it is not coming straight out from the chair, and also that we are getting a little bit of wrap on the front of the chair back, while the back has, the completely blacked out nature. And if you look back here on this wall, there is a little bit of light that's being caught on it. And we want to make sure that whatever our source is, we're filling this window enough to actually illuminate her whole front. We don't want it to be coming as a slice that's directly just across her face and maybe upper chest. We want her whole front so that we have that even light across her left side, and then it wraps to the right. So like I said, we're going to do some trickery ourselves. And to that end, the table also has some light on it. And just in terms of composition, it's really cool to me to have the table jutting in like this. This is like almost a like no for composition to have some object like this jutting into your frame, but it's almost exactly in the middle. You can see that this green dot right here is the middle of this. It's almost in the middle. It's like bisecting the frame, but it also kind of anchors her, and it leads our eye to the left, and then kind of up around her eyes down to the chair. I think that this could be a painting of her missing somebody who used to sit in that chair. I have no real idea of what it could be exactly, like, in terms of what it really was. This might be just a seated painting anyways. Um, but the idea that she's missing someone who used to sit in that chair, she's kind of looking down. It's almost like she's missing her cat or her dog or somebody that used to sit in that chair. There's a couple different ideas you could go with there, just in terms of that feeling. And I'd never noticed before, but it kind of like is really interesting to me that her dress and area down here almost becomes translucent. I can't tell if this is just a fact of how it was like scanned or something, or photographed for this digital image, but it almost like fades into nothing down here at the bottom, in an almost ghostly way, which is really interesting. But yes, we want to make sure that we're getting enough light in and then having it fade both to the bottom and to the left. So let's talk about actually lighting something like this. Now, I've gone through and actually made the lighting diagrams this time. I'm trying out a couple different styles for these videos. And in this case, this is the cheapest option in my opinion. All that you need is a lamp with a reflector hood and two bounces. Now, this could be shot on a stage or in a real location that you've rented or have access to. The stage would give you more flexibility and control and consistency. The real place would mean that you would have to, have basically timing with the sun to actually work out. So, you want to make sure that if you're doing this, that your sun is somewhere behind you like this, so that you're not having some weird angles where if it's over here, the sun is going to be more powerful than most lamps that micro budget filmmakers are using. And if the sun is casting a shadow like this across the table, towards, like this direction, that would look weird. So you kind of want to have either the sun be completely not in play over on the other side of the house, and just maybe giving some ambient light, or behind the lamp, something like that. So the idea here is that we're having the lamp with the reflector hood on it. Reflector hoods do sometimes have multi-shadow problems. Here, there's so many different details that I'm not sure that that would be a major concern. And I usually find that if you're shooting a reflector hood through a window, the multi-shadow effect can just look like how windows sometimes separate beams of light a little bit and create like internal shadows. If you are having a reflector hood that has a multi-shadow effect, that's a problem. You can get things like diffusion socks. I have an old video you can watch if you want to. I'll link that in the video's description. That video is about the like colored diffusion socks as well as the white ones. The colored ones I think are pretty crap tools, but the white ones do work well as individual diffusion and making kind of a micro softbox for your lamp that really helps smooth that out while not cutting the power too much. That will be pushing through this window. Like I said, we want it to be angled backwards just a little bit. Like you can see this angle right here is roughly like 15, 20 degrees. It is not much, but it is enough to help us get that shadow going just backwards slightly and maybe touch the back wall behind her some, depending exactly on the angle of the light and those kinds of things and the positioning of the wall. And the goal here is, like I said, if you look at the little character that we have, her left side will be getting the light from the lamp all across it, and then will be blocking her right side. The chair here, you can see how it will be getting light all across the front. We want the seat and we want it to wrap around just a little bit there. We want to be able to see those things, but um, we want to be able to see those spindles, but we want it to not be so much that it actually gets the back. This is where we get a little bit of a challenge here. We also need to use a bounce to bring up the exposure on the far side of her face, which is that shadowed side, far being from the lamp. So we're going to use a bounce card, but we're going to do our best to not have it hit the back of the chair here. Now, my little you know, light path right here is probably going to be more something like this. Then this could be a pizza box. This could be a large piece of bounce. We want something to make sure that we are getting into that part of her face. If we want to not raise up the shadows too much on her arm and side of her body, then we want to use something a little bit smaller like that pizza box, or um, we could even use a reflector here. I was choosing a bounce so that it's very soft, but a reflector could work here and it might give a little bit more shaping to the face. That would be a little bit less quote unquote natural than a bounce. Um, but yes, I think that those are things that could work. We do want this lamp coming in at, maybe a 30-ish degree. To me, this looks like late afternoon light. There is maybe a little bit of a shadow underneath the object here on the wall. I don't know what that actually is, but there's a little bit of shadow underneath, so you can tell that the light is coming top down just a little bit, and you can see where the shadow is from her own head onto her shoulder. So we want this to be coming top down, maybe like 30 degrees, like I said. One thing that I don't know that you'd be able to do, at least in a cheaper setup here, is get this little bit of an edge light on the back of her head. That right there is basically completely unmotivated. That is just the artist making sure that we can see this portrait. If you wanted that, that could come from the bounce, like potentially there's a chance that it would be enough. But you could also put a little light up in the corner to cast on her back. I would say that that would maybe cause a shadow on the table, depending exactly on the angle and the strength and all those kinds of things. And then that adds something. So that's something that I would cut out of the cheap version of this setup. And lastly, let's say that the bounce right here, we're going to have this catch some of this light just even a little bit and push it back into her face to help wrap that shadow around. It'll lighten up the front of her a little bit. And especially if she's moving and turning her head or anything like that, that will just give us a little bit more range of that exposure across her front as we get to the dark side, where that exposure, duty will be picked up by the bounce on her right, our camera left. And so that's like the cheap setup. Basically, you need your camera, your bounce, and your lamp with a reflector hood. This can be done for a couple $100, even cheaper if you're renting these pieces of equipment. Now, let's talk about a couple different options here. I'm going to zoom out because what I would think would be even better would be to use a Fresnel. I like using Fresnels because it makes your light really, really sharp. You can dial in that focus from flood to spot and just get it a little bit more under your own control. And those shadows are A, not multi shadows, B, are really hard and I think look like sunlight more because of the directional nature of sunlight. And so basically, I've switched out the hood for a Fresnel. It's passing through the window still. We are still using the bounce to bring light back in. But in this case, if this is a little bit higher of a budget option, I'm using a flag to make sure the back of the chair is not getting any of that bounce. And I'm going to use probably a larger bounce. Once again, I'm going to use a bounce right here on the other side of the table to just try to catch any of that extra light. This could be just right out of frame right here and push that back to her front. Otherwise, this is basically the same setup. We want it to be 30 degrees down, blah, blah, blah. Now, our most expensive option down here requires another lamp. We're still going to be using the bounce on the camera left, her right side, and the flag to protect the chair just a little bit. But what we are also going to do is use a lamp with some diffusion instead of that bounce. Now, the lamp with diffusion gives us more control. If you'll notice, this one is bouncing from the inside of the room out because of the angle that we have to use to get it into the path of the Fresnel from the outside. In this case, we're able to angle it from the window side as relatively non-directional light because of it being diffused. I've used a 4x4, for the diagram here, but this could be a 2x3. You could go even smaller, a 1x2. I would say a 2x3 would be optimal here, in terms of like cost and grip setup, versus diffusion level. But the idea is that this is coming from that window side, so it's a little bit more motivated. It'll look a little bit more natural for this scene rather than having some reflection coming from this side that you can't quite tell. I don't think that this will take you out of the moment, but I think that this one will give you more control and look a little more natural. This also means that we can use this diffusion to make sure the softness is appropriate for exactly what we want. We want it to wrap. We can dial in, usually if your lamp has a dimmer either built in or you can attach it to a dimmer, you can dial in that level of exposure. If you don't have either of those and you are using like tungsten heads, you could use scrims. Like I said, you just want to be able to dial that in so that you have that control. And then if you look at this, it would be lighting the side of her face mostly, and then wrapping that light around with that control that you have. And it will get a little bit more light on the chair. You can see things like how the chair leg at the front here has a little bit more of a hot spot on the front edge. So that would help make that chair get more of that exposure, just the same as back up here, without it going all the way around to the back and changing how that exposure looks. So this one is more expensive. You need 2 lamps and you need a flag and you need balance and diffusion. That's still a relatively small setup. I would say if you wanted to advance it just a little more, you could use another lamp. This would have to be a small lamp, most likely, or one with like a snoot on it. You could use something like that to get that edge light right behind her like this. I would say that that is not my priority with this setup. I think that that is distinctly artist manipulation to make sure that we can see her there. I think in terms of what we're doing, she'll either be able to be seen there or we could use a kicker to create a streak of light on the back while retaining most of that darkness, um, and still be able to have that separation. And so I've put that option down here. Now, the thing with any of these is that we do want to still retain the darkness behind her as best as possible. This bounce will give us the least amount of light casting all the way back here. This lamp and diffusion setup is more flexible in terms of controlling that, so we can dim it down and match it to a proper exposure ratio to what we're getting from the Fresnel outside so that we can retain that darkness. But it might cause that to be brought up just a little bit more. As I said, you could use something like a kicker to create a streak of light through there, that is maybe a little more abstract, but creates some separation so that we can see into it, enough to have separation for her. But there are a couple different options there. With any of these, I think with a really strong key coming from the outside, especially something like a Fresnel, I really like the Aperture 2X Fresnel and use it a lot. And that tool basically doubles your exposure value. So something like this could be quite powerful if you have a Fresnel on it. So having that be dark, as long as you don't have this lamp turned up too high, should be relatively easy. And notice how, unlike a lot of these scenes, I didn't put a space light in here. I think that most of this exposure can be, pun intended, developed by just these 2 lamps in this more expensive version, or just the lamp and the bounce in this version. The lamp and the bounce will be contrastier most likely, but you will lose her face some and it'll be more contrasty on her face. This option right here in the middle will have your best balance of contrast and ability to see into that shadow. It is funny that I thought pre-building the diagram might make the video significantly shorter, and I'm not sure if that's true because I love talking about lighting. So that is the end result that we have here. We have a couple different options, for slightly different variations and your ability to choose based upon your budget and your crew, as well as the actual style that you would want to do. This is how I analyze basically any reference image in terms of lighting. I really like doing this. I think it's a very useful tool to practice and learn lighting. Like I said at the beginning, if you do want to pick up my free Filmmaker Tools template, it's linked down in the video's description. And if you want to join my Patreon, I'd love to have you. I do also have tip jars at Ko-fi and Buy Me a Coffee if you want to support my channel and the video lessons that I'm creating. If you like videos about lighting, cinematography, and micro-budget filmmaking, and you want to learn more tools and techniques for it, please consider subscribing. Right now, my next milestone goal is 2,000 subscribers, and I am so excited to be really close. If you liked this video in particular, please do give it a like. That really helps me with the YouTube algorithm and reaching new viewers who also like these kinds of videos. This week, take care of yourselves, take care of people around you, wear a mask in public to help reduce illness transmission, stand up for people who need you and your voice. Just try to pour kindness into everything that you do. Trust me, the world really needs it right now. And as always, I hope that you have an absolutely wonderful week ahead of you. Peace.